What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have a very busy show today, as last week we had lots of upsets. On the men's side, we had UCLA downing Pepperdine in 5 sets. And we also had UC San Diego finally picking up their first victory of the season over UC Irvine. Good for those pesky little Tritons. And let us not forget the upsets that happened on the women's side of things, as Loyola Marymount, the Lions, were able to take down number 18 San Diego. How'd they do it, and what went wrong for the Toreros? Also, we had Florida State. How about the Noles taking down number 14 Notre Dame in 5 sets? Oh, and we also had some high school volleyball upsets. You thought I wasn't going to include that, did you? We had Orange Lutheran knocking off a pair of Trinity League powerhouses. Who were those teams that fell, and what went right for the Lancers of Orange Lutheran? Also, we have a big week this week, as this week is rivalry week. And there are a lot of big-time volleyball matchups that I need to preview. What are those matchups, and which teams will come out on top? All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Or, I'm sorry, not Tuesday afternoon, Monday afternoon. I'm so used to being on Tuesday afternoon that I am now starting to say Tuesday afternoon every week. I was on Tuesday last week, and then unfortunately we had some technical issues. But that's okay, because I was able to make up that show on Thursday, and now we're back here on our most recent primary time. So it's going to be a fun time. And it's going to be a fun time as well, as we welcome Larry B into the chat room. Thank you for joining in. He says his usual match time. Well, he normally says game time, but normally volleyball is known as match, so we'll just leave it as it is. Before we get into all of the volleyball madness that's happening, we gotta give some love to our sponsors at IE Sports Radio. Our first sponsor is Legacy Financial. 2020 was indeed a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're ever in a financial struggle, you're doing well, you want to get to the next level, or you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn money part-time, give AO a call at 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. AO and her husband Andrew are just 2 people on a mission to help families build a legacy. And you could also call them if you just want financial advice in general, because they offer free financial advice as well. So definitely give AO a call. Once again, that phone number is 510-928-2104. And you can follow Legacy Financial on Twitter at legacy_uncut on Twitter. And you can also follow them on Instagram at sims_uncut on Instagram. The second IE Sports Radio sponsor is Mama's Always Right Media. Are you feeling overwhelmed with schoolwork? Those essays keep you up at night? Don't lose sleep. Pick up the phone. Mama's Always Right Writing Agency will give you quality essays, and they will always make their deadlines. Sleep soundly knowing that they are on the job. For more information, call 626-653-3649. That number again is 626-653-3649. And while you're at it, you can check out Mama's Always Right Media's podcasts, such as It Goes Down in the PM. Make sure you check out the newest episode of It Goes Down in the PM. And the second podcast for Mama's Always Right Media is Coffee After Dark. Don't miss the next story of your favorite the next chapter of your favorite love story. Check out Season 2 of Coffee After Dark, brought to you by Mama's Always Right Media, where they will help you open your business from start to finish. And then the last sponsor from IE Sports Radio is the Sports Rundown. Are you a sports fan but have too much going on in your life these days to keep up with the 24/7 news cycle? Or maybe you are new to sports and want to understand the nuances better. If so, then the Sports Rundown is for you. They are a new podcast that gives you basic, professional, and collegiate sports news, stats, tidbits, and fun facts by the time you get to work, start that second cup of coffee, or finish walking the dog. Enough information to make you rich with knowledge involving sports while talking about current sporting events, and they will teach you something fun along the way, like about mascots, uniforms, history, feel-good stories, and sports rules. And to all you soccer studs out there, they cover the Premier League. New episodes drop Monday and Friday mornings, so come give them a listen. Thank you to all three of our sponsors for being the official sponsors of iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Now let's get on to the volleyball mass. But instead of starting with collegiate volleyball, we're going to start on the high school side of things. So last week was a beautiful week in terms of high school volleyball because high school girls volleyball in California has returned. And I don't know all of the teams that are playing. I only know a few of the teams that are playing, like Mater Dei, and I don't know about Redondo Union or Marymount or Torrey Pines or any of those other schools. But I did see that Mater Dei played, and for those that don't know, Mater Dei is basically good at everything. Yeah. All right, but in terms of girls volleyball, they actually had 2 carry the 3 -4. They had a 23 league game winning streak that dated all the way back to 2017. Basically, Mater Dei has owned the Trinity League for a while everyone else is just paying the rent. But last Tuesday actually was a first in the Trinity League girls volleyball history, as Orange Lutheran, yes, the Orange Lutheran Lancers were able to knock off Mater Dei in 4 sets. Now, I actually saw that matchup on a live stream via Instagram Live. Shout out to Mater Dei Girls Volleyball for putting up that live stream. Good for them. But I was actually quite astounded that Orange Lutheran got the win, just because Mater Dei always has a great team year in and year out. I know they lost quite a bit of seniors from last year. They lost Mia Tuaniga, Meg Brown, Lauren Tarnoff, Vanessa Zolg, Reagan Merck, a few other players as well to graduation, but they still have some good talent on their team, such as Caden Gronsky, Lauren Sweeney, Jordan Schilling, who just recently committed to West Virginia, all that. But I didn't think they'd actually lose to Orange Lutheran. They actually lost on the road, so if anything, I thought Mater Dei was going to lose to Santa Margarita, which that's been the second best team in the Trinity League for a while. But Orange Lutheran was able to pull off the upset. Well, I don't know if we can call it I don't even know if we can call it an upset, but it is what it is. It's just a great win for a program that's been struggling and that's been young the past few years, and that's had a lot of roster turnover and a coaching carousel, so good for them. And then also Orange Lutheran upset Santa Margarita. Again, I don't think I should use the word upset considering we don't know how good these teams are, because it could be because Mater Dei was just having a tough time, or they had some players opt out. So I don't think I could use the word upset, but it is impressive that Orange Lutheran pulled off those victories. And what really impressed me about Orange Lutheran's victories was that they have a great senior class this year. They have 9 seniors on their team. I didn't think they'd actually pull off both victories against Santa Margarita and Mater Dei. Like, if you told me that and I was unaware of this whole thing, I wouldn't have believed you. But you got to give credit to Orange Lutheran and their team. And it's too bad that there won't be playoffs this year due to COVID-19, because CIF announced that there's not going to be playoffs this year because of everything that went on in the fall, because normally volleyball is supposed to be a fall sport, and then that got pushed back to like January, then it got pushed back to March, and then they just said, we're not having playoffs. Nope, sorry. So it is a bummer, especially for the seniors. And for those 9 seniors on Orange Lutheran, this would have probably been the best year to take the Trinity League title, considering if Mater Dei was truly down, who knows if they could have beaten them at Mater Dei. Same with Santa Margarita. But it is going to go down in the record books that Olu beat Mater Dei and Santa Margarita. And then this week, Orange Lutheran closes out its very shortened season against J. Sarah and Rosary, two teams I know the Lancers can beat. If they don't beat them, then I'll be stunned as heck. But that's pretty much the that little quick little shout out to Orange Lutheran. I've always thought high of. I'll be truly honest and blunt. I haven't really thought high of Orange Lutheran. I think they were a decent team back in 2013 and 14. But they never got over the hump, which was kind of their big problem. But now, looking at their team this year, I think they're in good shape going forward. It is still to be determined that on what's going to happen with their team, because they're obviously going to lose 9 seniors, and that's tough stuff right there. But this is probably at least a good way to send off the seniors, because it really sucks of what happened to all those players, because who knows if Orange Lutheran could have made a deep playoff run in Division 2, mind you. I don't think they would have gotten far in Division 1, but Division 2 they might have actually had a deep playoff run. But that question won't be able to be answered, as there will not be playoffs and whatnot. So there's that. So that's pretty much the quick gist of high school volleyball. High school boys volleyball also returns this week, as I don't know which of the big time teams are going to be playing this week, but I should be able to keep tabs on them. Like the top teams, I don't think play this week, like Huntington Beach, Newport Harbor, Corona Del Mar, Miracosta, Loyola. I don't think those teams play this week, but they will be playing eventually, and who knows if we'll be able to have a indoor season. I'm sure indoor sports will be returning if, like, girls volleyball from the Trinity League is returning. So it just goes to show you that everything is starting to open up. So that's that for high school volleyball. Now let's get into the college. Scene. All right. So the first upset, I don't know if we could really call this an upset, but this upset was courtesy of UC Irvine and UC San Diego, two teams that were borderline of being ranked in the NCAA men's volleyball top 15 coaches poll. UC Irvine actually entered this game with one win, while UC San Diego was hungry for their first. This was actually the second game between the Tritons and the Anteaters. The Anteaters won the first matchup. But this match actually went to UC San Diego. The first set, UC San Diego smoked the Anteaters, winning that first set 25-16. The second set, UC Irvine squeaked by the Tritons in that set 26-24. UC San Diego then was able to squeak by UC Irvine in the third set 28-26. Set 4 was won by UC Irvine quite nicely by a score of 25-21. And then the fifth set, UC San Diego never trailed, and they won the fifth set by a convincing score of 15-7, giving them their first win of the season and their first win in terms of the Big West Conference. So good for you, UC San Diego, and shout out to them for following the Set Point account on Twitter. We appreciate you, or I appreciate you. So looking at the box score, the Tritons were led by Ryan Ka, who had 25 kills and hit .385. Kyle McCauley had 13 kills, while Shane Bennett had 11 kills, no hitting errors, while hitting .524. Blake Crisp had 51 assists, while Crisp had 2 assists. The Tritons as a team had only 14 service errors and 4 service aces, which isn't bad. UC San Diego also blocked the ball well, as they had 25 blocks in total, but that actually totals out to 12.5 blocks as a team, so it's good stuff, right? Actually, no, not. I'm sorry, it wasn't 12.5 blocks. It was 13.5 blocks. So, yeah, I'm doing my math wrong. UC San Diego also had 47 digs as a whole, 11 of which went to Kyle McCauley, which is quite nice. He had his double-double. Colin Shannon had 9 digs, and Matt Palma had 9 digs as well. So, nice little dig distribution right there. And as a team, UC San Diego hit .326, which is pretty good. Like, when you're hitting that high against UC Irvine, your offense is cooking. Because UC Irvine has a pretty good block, but their block was pretty bad, as I'm about to get into in a little bit, as UC Irvine was led by Joel Schneidmiller, who had 17 kills. Cole Gillis had 14 kills, while Francisco Sani had 13 kills, and Scott Static had 11 kills. Dylan Zai had 51 assists, while in terms of service aces, Static had 2 service aces, while as a team, UC Irvine had 4. The problem with UC Irvine was that they had 25 service errors, which is going to really hurt you in the long run. So I don't know how many of them came in the 5th set, but I will say this, you can't have 25 service errors and hope to win. And then UC Irvine's blocking was pretty abysmal, as they had 6 block assists and 1 solo block for a total of 4 team blocks, which is unacceptable. You cannot win matches in the Big West Conference with just 4 team blocks. And then in terms of digs, the Anteaters had 50 digs. Akil Tungutar, I probably butchered that name, had 19 digs, while Cole Gillis and Francisco Sani had 7 digs. As a team, UC Irvine hit 289, which is actually pretty decent. For a team that hit 289, they really played well. Their only bad sets came in set number 1 and set number 5, where set 1, UC Irvine hit 67, and then in set 5, UC Irvine hit 0 and had 4 kills and 4 hitting errors. So there's that. As for UC San Diego, their best hitting performance came in set 5 when they had 0 hitting errors and 10 kills, which is absolutely amazing. They had a hitting percentage of .714, which is absolutely amazing. They pretty much hit average through sets 2, 3, and 4, as they hit pretty much in the low to mid 200s. So it's still good enough to win. So I'm impressed by how UC San Diego was able to finally get that first win off their back. Now let's go to a more unexpected upset, as UCLA downed Pepperdine in 5 sets. As Pepperdine took the first set 25-23, UCLA responded by taking the second set 25-12. Third set, Pepperdine was able to take that set 25-22. Fourth set, UCLA dominated that set, winning 25-14. And in the 5th set, UCLA had all the momentum from set 4, winning set 5, 15-10. I liked how UCLA didn't drop those 2 sets in close fashion, while they blew out Pepperdine in most of the other sets. Or in the 3 sets. I guess we can call the 5th set a blowout, because even though there were 6 ties and 3 lead changes, UCLA was able to pull away with ease. Well, not with ease, but they were able to just pull away and get the dub. So UCLA was led by Cole Ketcherzinski and Merrick McHenry, who each had 14 digs. McHenry hit 500, as he only had 3 hitting errors. Ethan Champlin and Austin Matauatia each had 9 kills, while Sam Coburn had 7 kills. Coburn also had 44 assists, while UCLA had a mind-boggling 13 service aces. 6 of them went to Austin Matauatia, 3 went to Champlin, and 1 went to Ketcherzinski. In terms of blocks, UCLA blocked the ball as a team 16 times, which is very impressive. See, UCLA is going to win if they put up numbers like that. As opposed to putting up numbers in matches that they lost against, such as Concordia and USC. Not that I'm calling those teams out, but I'm just saying. UCLA surprisingly only had 29 digs. 7 of them went to Cole Pender, while 6 of them went to Champlin and Coburn. Sam Coburn, because there's actually 2 Coburns, Sam and Kevin, so just gotta throw that out there. As a team, UCLA hit 333. They actually had one set where they hit under 300, but they still hit 250 for that set, so that's not bad. So as for Pepperdine was led by Jacob Steele, who had 14 kills, the only player who had double-digit kills for the Waves, as Spencer Wickens had 9 kills, and those were your top 2 kill leaders. as their next kill leader was Anderson Fuller, who had 6 kills. In terms of assists, Bryce Dvorak had 35 assists, while Pepperdine only had 1 service ace. That is concerning right there. Their lone ace went to Bryce Dvorak. They also missed 15 serves, so that's not going to get the job done if you're Pep. As for the blocks, Pepperdine had 9 blocks as a team. They had 3 solo stuffs and 12 block assists. And in terms of digs, Pepperdine had 27 digs, as 7 of them went to Wickens, while 5 of them went to Noah Dyer, Bryce Dvorak, Jacob Steele, and Trey Cole. As a team, Pepperdine only hit 158, which is kind of not what a number... what they were... I think they were number 3 or number 4 in the coaches poll. So I was a bit surprised when I saw that. So, yeah, I was pretty shocked to see Pepperdine losing. But I guess they had a few matches postponed or canceled. But the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation Conference is wide open this year. Between UCLA, Pepperdine, and BYU, anyone can win that. So that's pretty much it for the noteworthy men's volleyball upsets. Now let's jump to the women's volleyball upsets. We have quite a bit of those. And we have quite a bit of some noteworthy 5-set matches. So let's go to the Pac-12, where we will stay in Westwood, where we have number 17 UCLA upsetting number 9 Utah, as UCLA took the first set 25-22. Second set, Utah won that set 25-20. Third set, UCLA won 25-21, and then UCLA won the fourth set 25-22. As for the stats, Mac May bounced back from that atrocious game she had against Colorado and had 19 kills, only 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .311. Good stuff from her. Elon McCall had 17 kills and hit .279, while Iman Njai and Sabrina Smith each had 7 kills. In terms of assists, UCLA ran at 6-2 offense, and Kate Lane and Audrey Pack each had 31 and 20 kills respectively. UCLA totaled 5 service aces while missing 7 serves. Not too bad. In terms of digs, UCLA had 64. 19 of them went to Zoe Fleck, while Elon McCall totaled 13 digs, and Kate Lane added 11 digs. In terms of blocks, UCLA had 9 blocks as a team combined. And in terms of hitting percentage, UCLA hit .280, which isn't bad, actually. Their only bad set came in set 4, which surprisingly they won that by quite a good margin. So, good for UCLA. So, as for Utah, this was actually the first match between Utah and UCLA. The second match was I'll get into that in a little bit, was basically 2 days after. So Utah was led by Danny Drews, who had 18 kills, but she only hit 189. She had 53 attempts and 8 hitting errors. Yikes. Kenzie Korber had 14 kills, 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .429. She had 28 attempts as well. Madeline Robinson had 10 kills, 2 hitting errors, and she hit .348. And those are pretty much your noteworthy kill leaders. As in terms of assists, Kaina Torres had 42 assists, while in terms of service aces, Utah had 3 service aces and missed 9 serves. Utah also had 60 digs. 12 of them went to Torres and Korber, while 10 went to Drews. In terms of blocks, Utah surprisingly had 12 blocks as a team. 2 of them were solo blocks and 20 of them were block assists. And Utah also had a hitting percentage of .270, which I'm really surprised that Utah had those numbers and they still lost. I couldn't believe it. But then again, UCLA was hitting in the high 200. They're hitting in the high 200s, mid and low 300s through the first 3 sets. So I'm kind of shocked at how Utah lost that match. But with all due respect, Utah won the second match, which kind of what matters the most, considering they were able to salvage a split, as they still are in first place in the Pac-12 going into this week. I think there's only 2 more weeks to go Actually, no, there's 3 more weeks to go. 3 more weeks remain, and there are not going to be any makeup weeks. So any series that is unable to go is automatically canceled. They can't be made up. I'm surprised they're not going to make it up, but I don't know what to say about the Pac-12. I digress. So now let's jump to the ACC. So this matchup, this upset came at the hands of unranked Florida State against number 14 Notre Dame. Now, Florida State, I did not know this about Florida State. Florida State had actually won 8 straight matches going into this matchup against Notre Dame, and it looked like Notre Dame was going to cruise to an easy match as they took the first 2 sets by scores of 25-21 and 25-23. And I was like, okay, well, Notre Dame's going to ease past Florida State. Then Florida State dominated the third set. They didn't even trail in that third set and won 25-12. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. Maybe Notre Dame got caught asleep. And then the fourth set, Florida State did the exact same thing and won that set 25-16. And I'm like, all right, I see you, Florida State. And then set 5, it was quite tight toward the middle of the set, as it looked as if Notre Dame was going to prevent the reverse sweep, but then Florida State was able to pull it out in the end. They actually led 11-9 at one point, and then they led 13-11, and then scored the last 2 points to win the match in 5 sets, as the reverse sweep was complete and Florida State won, which I was very impressed. So the thing about Florida State is that they didn't really have too much of a fall season, as 3 matches in, after 3 matches, 4 matches into their season, the rest of their season got postponed due to COVID, and they had to make up all of their games in the early moments of springtime. So they basically got a head start in terms of regional play of ACC play. Like, they got to play Clemson twice. They still need to play Wake Forest twice, so I don't know when they're going to make that up. Maybe in the final week of the season? I don't know. But so far, Florida State is starting to come up on everyone's radar, as the Seminoles had 14 players in double digits in terms of kills, as they were led by Morgan Chacon, who had 18 kills, 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 300. She did have 50 attempts, but we could forgive her for that. Florida State also got kill contributions from Teran Rodriguez and Emma Clothier, who each had 13 kills and only had 1 hitting error. Rodriguez hit 571, while Clothier hit 480. Jasmine Martin had 11 kills, only 3 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 296. So when you have 3 players in double digits in terms of kills and that are hitting 290 or higher, that's when your team is at their best. In terms of assists, Olivia Daly had 50 assists, while in terms of service aces and service errors, the Seminoles had 7 aces and only 6 service errors, which isn't bad. Florida State dug the ball 77 times, as Lauren Burrows had 26 digs, while Jessica Nunge had 17 digs. Chacon had 13 digs, and Caroline Golden also had 12 digs. Surprisingly enough, Caroline Golden was the libero, but Burrows was able to burrow the ball a lot. That was a bad pun. Get it? Burrow. Dig. That was bad. Anyway, Florida State had a total of 7 blocks as a team. They had 1 solo stuff and 12 block assists. And as a team, Florida State hit .302, which really is impressive. Like, even in set 2, when they lost that set, they actually hit the ball well. Set 1 was their only terrible set they had, as they hit an abysmal 114. So, good for Florida State. I think they're starting to get it together really quick. Now, as for Notre Dame had 4 players in double digits in terms of kills, as they were led by Charlie Nigo, who had 14 kills, but only had a hitting percentage of 143, as she had 8 hitting errors. Caroline Muth had 12 kills, only 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 385. Lindsay Miller and Aubrey Hamilton each had 11 kills, while while Miller had 0 hitting errors and hit .647, while Hamilton had 6 hitting errors and hit only .96. In terms of assists, Zoe Nunez had 43 assists, while in terms of service aces and service errors, Notre Dame had 6 apiece in each of those categories. In terms of digs, Notre Dame dug the ball 66 times. 17 of them went to Hattie Monson, while Nancy Kane had 15 of them, Nunez had 11 of them, and Migo had 10. As a team, Notre Dame hit .203, which is not going to get the job done. And also, Notre Dame had 5 blocks as a team, as they had 1 solo stuff and 8 block assists. So, that was probably the worst time to lose if you're Notre Dame. You cannot, if you're Notre Dame, you cannot afford an ACC loss to any team that's not named Pitt, Georgia Tech, or Louisville. Because every ACC game is now precious for the Fighting Irish going forward. Because, remember, the NCAA tournament is only 48 teams this year, and only 18 of them? Yeah, 18 of them are going to be automatic qualifiers, as 30 teams are going to be automatic qualifiers, 18 teams are going to be at-larges, so that really thins out the horde if you're an at-large team, especially if you're in a non-Power 5 conference, so there's that right there. So Notre Dame really has to run the table, especially since they still have to make up their match against Louisville, and they also have to play Georgia Tech on April 1st. So Notre Dame, you are kind of in trouble, because I guess it also, because another team that's also in the hunt to win the ACC title is Louisville, and they're actually not too far from Georgia Tech and Notre Dame. I think only half a game separates those 3 teams, as they've only lost twice, once to Pitt and once to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has 2 losses, as they lost to Pitt and they lost to Florida State, and then Georgia Tech has 2 losses in the ACC, one to Pitt and then one to Miami. So the ACC is going to be really close between Georgia Tech, Louisville, and Notre Dame. But don't count out Pitt. They could still maybe take the ACC title. And who knows with Florida State as well, because if Florida State's playing this good, they might be something to watch for. But they still have to play Pitt, and they play Louisville this weekend. So Florida State's got a lot of its work cut out. And then they also have a few other tricky matchups, like against Duke and whatnot. But we'll see what happens with Florida State. Florida State actually won this weekend as they took down Virginia Tech as well. So they've won 9 in a row. And I'll be talking about Florida State in a little bit. But let's jump over to the West Coast Conference, where this upset really blew my mind. I could not believe this upset. So this one came from unranked Loyola Marymount against number 18 San Diego. So at a glance, I was thinking, and this is actually the second matchup between LMU and San Diego, as San Diego won the first match in 3 sets. But here's the thing about San Diego. They hadn't played in over a week, as their matchup against Pacific got postponed. I think it was due to COVID protocols in the Toreros program. It was either their program. I think it was their program, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't really release a press release on that, so I can't be overly confirming that, but it is what it is. Anyway, as for LMU San Diego, the first set, surprisingly enough, LMU led by as many as 10 in that first set. And I'm thinking, okay, well, LMU is going to win that first set. But not today with San Diego. San Diego actually came back from a 10-point deficit to take set 1 25-22. If you're an LMU fan, you have to be fuming over that. But in the second set, LMU actually took the second set with the greatest of ease, winning that second set 25-22. This was actually a game of runs, as there weren't too many ties and too many lead changes in each of the sets. As for set 3, that was probably the closest one, as San Diego and Loyola Marymount were each tied each tied 6 times, and they had 2 lead changes, which was actually the most in all of the sets. But San Diego was able to take the third set 25-22, taking a 2-1 lead in the match. But then LMU took the fourth set as they never trailed and only tied twice, taking it 25-21 as a fifth set was needed between the Lions and the Toreros. Now, here's the thing about set 5. Hear me out, everybody. So, San Diego got the early jump. I think they led like 4-1, and then they eventually led 10-3. So, everyone here is thinking 10-3, number 18 San Diego over LMU. LMU lost its middle blocker, Aaron Krill, for the year. LMU just hasn't met expectations. San Diego's going to win. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, San Diego's got this. They can fully prepare for their matchup against BYU. Except not really. LMU actually went on a 9-1 run, cutting San Diego's once 7-point lead down to 1, and then eventually LMU outscored San Diego 6-3 en route to taking the fifth set 16-14. Okay. We have a couple problems here. First and foremost, how did San Diego lose that match? How did San Diego lose that fifth set? They were up 7! You had 5 more points to close the match. You're facing an LMU team that is about as... I don't know. That's about as bad as Colorado. And you mean to tell me you couldn't hold a 7-point lead in the fifth set? What are you doing, San Diego? I'm sorry, I had to do that again. But do you know how bad of a loss that is for the Toreros? It's so bad that not only is San Diego no longer all alone in first place, but you want to know who's moved in to a tie in first place in the West Coast Conference with them? BYU. And guess who the Toreros play this week? BYU. And you want to know what else? San Diego has more company. It's not just BYU that's tied with them for first place. Pepperdine moved into a tie for first place with the Toreros too. What could have been a great win on the road turned out to be a disaster, a choke for the ages. San Diego gonna San Diego. What are you doing, Lady Toreros? If this comes back to haunt the Toreros and they somehow miss the NCAA tournament, I will have no sympathy for them. You cannot lose to a team like LMU. I'll give LMU credit. They deserve all the credit in the world because they came back from a 10-3 deficit, and that's very rare. Very rare do teams come back from a 7-point deficit in the fifth set to win the fifth set and go on to win the match. But this is San Diego. This is a good San Diego team that has some talented players and talented youth as well. And you mean to tell me San Diego actually decided to stop playing volleyball when they're 5 points away from winning the match? I don't believe this. Oh, shame on you, San Diego. Shame on you. Because here's the thing. I could see San Diego still making the NCAA tournament, but the problem with the West Coast Conference is it's not a Power 5 conference. It's got to deal with the Pac-12, the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC. Oh, and who knows? Who knows if the ACC could have 5 teams in the NCAA tournament, and then Lord knows about the SEC having maybe 4 teams in the NCAA tournament, such as Kentucky, Florida, Missouri, and heaven knows Tennessee or Arkansas. And then you have the Pac-12, which could have Washington, Washington State, Oregon, UCLA, and Utah, not in particular order, making the NCAA tournament as well. And then you have all the other qualifiers as well. So if the ACC gets 5 teams, and then don't even get me started on the Big Ten, because you have Wisconsin, you have Nebraska, Minnesota, Ohio State, Purdue, Penn State, maybe Michigan. Well, maybe not Michigan, but still, you got to consider them. Maybe Illinois, but still, maybe Michigan. That's a possible 8 teams from the ACC, one of which being the automatic qualifier, and then 7 being at large. So, if San Diego somehow misses the NCAA tournament, and if they somehow lose next week, or this week, and next week, then guess what's going to happen? I will have zero sympathy for the Toreros, because they kind of brought this upon themselves. They were 11-0 going into this match, and then they stopped playing volleyball midway through. And they looked good in the first time around against LMU. And no one could make the excuse that San Diego had a week off, because they looked really good in their first match back from their little hiatus from last week. But now, they're basically in a logjam for first place with Pepperdine and BYU. And guess who San Diego plays this week and next week? BYU and Pepperdine, which I'll be getting into in a little bit. Okay, back to the stats from LMU and San Diego. LMU was led by Kari Geisberger, who had 17 kills. She had 17 kills, but the kill leader was Audrey Klemp, who had 21 kills. She hit 302, which is quite impressive. Sierra Bartley had 7 kills, and Gabby Heller had 9 kills. So, good stuff there. Isabella Bareford had 56 assists, while LMU only had 2 service aces, and they had 17 service errors, which, again, how does San Diego lose to a team like that? Like, what just went wrong with San Diego? I'll be getting into that in a little bit. So, as for LMU's blocks, they had a grand total of 18 blocks. 18 as a team. They had 26 block assists and 5 solo blocks. Emmeline Walters had 4 solo stuffs and 9 block assists. So she was dominant defensively. And she had 7 kills to boot as well. So she was the Reagan Pittman of LMU in this match. And then defensively, in terms of digs, LMU had 21 digs from Mary Schroll, while Bareford had 10 digs. As a team, LMU hit 253, which isn't bad, actually. But for most of the sets, for sets 1, 3, and 5, they didn't really hit all that great. So, again, San Diego only has themselves to blame. As for San Diego was led by Roxy Wilbin, who had 18 kills, while Thana Fayad had 16 kills. Fayad actually hit 394, while Wilbin hit 191. Katie Lukes had 9 kills, and Grace Froling had only 5 kills, 6 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of -50. Katie Lukes also had a hitting percentage of 97. That's where San Diego went wrong. You cannot have those two players hitting below 100. Or anything below like 200, 250. Otherwise, that's when your offense is getting very little production from there. In terms of assists, Isadora Turcariol had 25 assists, while Alex Hogland had 13 assists. So I guess they ran a 6-2 offense, or maybe they just ran the coach decided to switch out setters. Maybe an injury happened. I don't know. In terms of service aces and service errors, San Diego had 6 service aces. 3 of them went to Wilbin, while they had 8 service errors. In terms of blocks, San Diego had 14 blocks as a team. They had 3 solo stuffs and 22 block assists. In terms of digs, San Diego had 57 as a team. Annie Benbow had 19 digs, while Hogland had 10 of them for her double-double, and then Isadora Turcariol had 9 digs. As a team, San Diego only hit 157. They were pretty average for the most part. Even the sets they won, they hit a bad hitting percentage. They only had 4 kills in set 5, and in sets 1, 3, and 5, they hit 98, 91, and -59. I don't know how San Diego's going to win with those numbers. Like, even with LMU's bad night and their average team, that's still unacceptable. So, LMU has a lot of LMU I give a lot of credit to, first and foremost, but San Diego really needed to show up. I said last week that San Diego LMU was a trap series for the Toreros, as the Toreros could not afford to look ahead, and I think they did. And that's the tricky thing about their schedule, because their schedule was mainly, I won't say lightweight, but it favored them for the most part. Their only unfavorable matchup was against Santa Clara, but even so, Santa Clara was coming off of COVID, which San Diego, I was basically advantaged San Diego. So San Diego really disappointed. I was so disappointed in them. And there's only 2 weeks left, and the Torero schedule gets really tough because they play BYU at home on Wednesday, and then they play them on Saturday at BYU. And then next week they return back to Jenny Craig Pavilion to play Pepperdine, and Pepperdine has vastly improved, so it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if Pepperdine took a match or two off them. But I'm going to save that for next week, and I'm going to save BYU San Diego for later. So there's that. Alright, now let's get into the noteworthy 5-set matchups. So this first noteworthy 5-set matchup came at the hands of Missouri and Florida, as Missouri surprisingly took the first and second set by identical set scores of 25-23. And I was thinking, okay, Missouri's actually playing decent volleyball. They're actually playing well against an opponent 10 times better than them. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess this is their big time win. Congratulations, Missouri. And then I'm thinking, I'm going to be taking a lot of heat from Missouri fans. Except Florida won the third set 25-19, which, okay, Florida's actually playing decent volleyball. And the fourth set was very tight, as it was back and forth action, and it looked as if Missouri was going to win the match, but then Florida was able to grind it out and force a fifth set, winning set for 27-25. As for the fifth set, Missouri and Florida were tight going back and forth, but then Missouri actually found themselves ahead for the most part in the latter part of set 5, and they were even up 13-10, and it looked as if Missouri was going to hang on and get the win, and I'm like, alright, Missouri actually is going to pull off a stunning victory, and they're going to hold on, which could make their NCAA tournament hopes a lot better. Little did I know, this is Missouri we're talking about. Not a whole lot of good can come out of them. Missouri gave up not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 straight points to Florida to give the Gators the match, the set, 15-13, and the match. So not only did Missouri choke a 2-0 lead against Florida, but they choked a 13-10 lead in the fifth set. Florida, let's talk. Absolutely disappointing. How do you do that? How do you, again? Okay, this was a little bit more justifiable because you're facing the number 17, but you're up. And I know they're on the road as well, but you're up by 3. When you have basically surpassed 10 points in set 5, that's attack mode right there. You got to do everything you can. I am willing to bet that Missouri was just feeding the ball to Kylie DeBerg. But then again, I could be wrong. But still, it's like, Missouri. If Missouri doesn't make the NCAA tournament for some reason, I don't blame the NCAA tournament committee for leaving them out, because Missouri has no standout wins, and they lost to Tennessee as well. Missouri is not worthy of being in the NCAA tournament. I know they've had a few postponements, but that's not on them. So I'm just going to skim through Florida stats. Florida was led by Thayer Hall and Tara Caesar, who each had 24 kills. Hall actually only had 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .426, which is mind-blowing. And Caesar had hit 8 hitting errors, but had a hitting percentage of .364, which is pretty good. Holly Carlton had 12 kills and hit .250, while Lauren Forte had 9 kills and hit .500. So, good stuff for Florida. Marley Monserrat Monserez had 56 assists, while Ellie McKissock had 13 of them. In terms of service aces, the Gators had 6 service aces and only had 4 they had 14 service errors, as 4 aces went to Paige Hammond, so good for her. In terms of digs, Florida had 68 digs, 20 of them went to Monserez, while McKissock had 15, Caesar had 12, and Hall had 11. So those 4 players I mentioned, Hall, Caesar, Monserez, and McKissock, they all had double-doubles. Good for them. In terms of blocks, Florida had a grand total of 14 blocks as a team. They had 5 solo stuffs and 20 block assists, which is very impressive. And as a team, Florida hit 344, which is absolutely impressive. All right, now let's get to Missouri stats. So Missouri was led by Kylie DeBerg, which is no surprise. She had 25 kills, 8 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 270. Santon Hollingsworth had 17 kills, 8 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 196. That's pretty bad. Claudia Dillon had a hitting percentage of 350 and had 11 kills and 4 hitting errors. And Anna Dixon had 10 kills, 4 hitting errors, 34 attempts for a hitting percentage of only 176. Andrea Fuentes had 54 assists, while in terms of service aces and service errors, the Tigers had 2 service aces and 8 service errors. In terms of digs, now defensively, Missouri played the worst defense I've ever seen. And this really made me wonder how this team was so close to knocking off Florida. Missouri had a whopping 43 digs, only 43, compared to Florida's 68. 43 digs compared to 68 from Florida. Horrible defense. DeBerg had led the team in digs with 13, while Emily Brown had 11 and Fuentes had 9. In terms of blocks, Missouri had a grand total of only 4 blocks as a team. 1 solo stuff and 6 block assists. You have to have a high blocking number if you want to beat Florida. And your digs also have to be high as well. You cannot have 43 digs compared to Florida's 68 and expect to win. And you cannot have 4 blocks as a team compared to Florida's 15 and expect to win. You're facing a top 10 team. You're not facing Arkansas, LSU, all those other teams that you've beaten barely. Like, oh my gosh, Missouri. Missouri hit 233, and I'm still surprised they couldn't score 2 straight points. Like some top 25 team Missouri turned out to be. Blah. Alright, now for the final matchup, and this was my matchup of the week. This was between Ohio State and Nebraska. So, I'm actually going to go over both matches. Oh, and by the way, Missouri lost the second matchup to Florida, which in straight sets. Florida just had all the momentum and just basically just dominated the Tigers. The Gators couldn't afford another loss, though, in the SEC, considering their next series is against Kentucky, which is going to be a huge series. Anyway, now to Ohio State and Nebraska. So, I'm going to go over both matchups. So, the first matchup between Ohio State and Nebraska saw Ohio State winning the first 2 sets by scores of 25-21 and taking a 2-0 lead in the match. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be eating my words again, because I predicted Nebraska to win both these matchups. But then Nebraska actually showed up to the third set and won that third set 25-20. And then the fourth set, Nebraska won the fourth 25-20 as well, and then thus forcing a fifth set, which Nebraska also won 15-10. So I avoid getting dunked on when it comes to this match, and Nebraska actually hands Ohio State its first loss of the season. So good for you, Cornhuskers. Okay, it's not that impressive, but still, it's a good win for Nebraska. Probably their biggest win of the season, in my opinion. So, Nebraska was led by Lauren Stivrins, who had 18 kills, 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 424. Lexi Sun had 17 kills, 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 279. And Maddie Kubik had 13 kills, 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 237. Nicklin Hames had 51 assists, while in terms of service aces and service errors, Nebraska had 6 aces and 9 service errors. In terms of blocks, Nebraska had a grand total of 9 blocks as a team. And in terms of digs, the Huskers had 71 digs. Kenzie Knuckles had 24 of them. Keonale Akana had 17 digs, and Hames had 12 digs. As a team, Nebraska hit 252, which isn't bad actually. They actually started getting hot in terms of hitting percentage in sets 4 and 5. So I gotta give credit to Nebraska. They really needed to win, and they could not afford a loss in the Big Ten. So good win for the Huskers. As for Ohio State, they were led by Emily Landot, who had 23 kills, but she had 10 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 210. Vanja Bukalic had 17 kills, 7 hitting errors, and a hitting percentage of 231. And Riley Ratter had 14 kills, only 1 hitting error, 22 attempts for a hitting percentage of 591. Mac Pedraza had 53 assists, while in terms of service aces and service errors, Ohio State had 2 aces and 12 service errors. So that ratio is not really good. In terms of blocks, Ohio State had a grand total of 5 blocks as a team, 2 solo stuffs, 6 block assists, while Ohio State had 71 digs. Kylie Murr had 23 digs, including a very spectacular play where she just saved practically everything. Landot had 17 digs, and Gabby Gonzalez had 13 digs to go along with 9 kills. As a team, Ohio State hit 222, and after that first set, they kind of cooled off. In set 1, Ohio State hit 400, which, if you're doing that against Nebraska, your offense is on fire. And then they cooled off drastically as they hit 227 in set 2, 200 in set 3, 57 in set 4, and 190 in set 5. But overall, it's not too bad of a loss. The fact that you were up 2-0 on Nebraska is impressive. But as I said, you can never, ever, 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 ever underestimate a John Cook coached team. You can never, ever do that. So as for the second match between Ohio State and Nebraska, the second matchup started like the first matchup. Ohio State took the first set. They won the first set 25-20, while in set 2, Nebraska won the second set 25-22. The third set, Nebraska actually won the third set, like last match, 25-21, and suddenly Nebraska was up 2-1 against the Buckeyes, and it was looking like that the Buckeyes were going to lose again. But then the fourth set, Ohio State actually showed up, never trailed, and won set 4 by a score of 25-21. Now, set 5 was intense. There were 10 ties and 4 lead changes. It was back and forth action. Ohio State neither team led by as many as 1. Ohio State led by 1 at 7-6 at one point, but then they eventually led 10-7. And I'm thinking, okay, it looks like Ohio State's going to win this one. And then Nebraska scored 4 unanswered points to take the lead at 11-10, while Ohio State was able to come back and tie the matchup at 13-13. But a hitting error from Lexi Sun of Nebraska gave Ohio State match point at 14-13, which every Nebraska fan basically lost it when they saw Lexi Sun having a hitting error, which was very disappointing. And then the last point, Ohio State won courtesy of I think it was a kill on the right side or a kill in the middle. Either way, Ohio State won the fifth set 15-13, and they upset Nebraska on the road. Very impressive win for the Buckeyes, and they were lucky to salvage a split, considering if they didn't, then their Big Ten hopes would have gone pretty much down in flames. But I digress. Ohio State was led by Emily Landot, who had 18 kills, 7 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .234. Vanja Bukalic had 16 kills, 7 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .300. And Riley Ratter had 10 kills, 0 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .417. Gabby Gonzalez also chipped in 9 kills, as well as Lauren Witt. Mac Pedraza had 49 assists and had 4 kills as well. Ohio State had 6 service aces and 12 service errors, while Ohio State also had 10 blocks as a team, and they were all block assists, as they had 20 block assists. In terms of digs, Ohio State had 57 digs. 13 of them went to Pedraza, 11 of them went to Hannah Grunsfelder and Vanja Bukal. 11 of them went to Kylie Murr and Hannah Grunsfelder, and Emily Landot had 10 digs. As a team, Ohio State hit .280, which is pretty impressive. The first and fifth set, they really hit the lights out, while sets 1 and 2, or sets 2 and 4 were a little average. And then set 3, despite them losing that set, they hit .294. As for Nebraska, they were led by Lexi Sun, who had 22 kills but had 9 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .250. Lauren Stivrins had 14 kills, 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .400. And Maddie Kubik had 13 kills, 5 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .235. Nicklin Hames had 27 assists, while in terms of service aces and service errors, Nebraska had 3 aces, but had 8 service errors. In terms of blocks, Nebraska didn't really block the ball all that well, as they only had 5 blocks as a team, and they had 10 block assists. Nebraska also had 65 digs. 16 of them went to Kenzie Knuckles and Kiana Akana. Nicklin Hames had 14 digs, while Kubik had 10 digs, and Sun had 18 digs. As a team, Nebraska hit .244. So basically, that's how Nebraska and Ohio State split their matchup. Good for those two. It was a great matchup between both those teams. And at the very least, if either team has to cancel a series, I'd like to see a rematch between those two as a non-conference game. But I digress. Who knows? Maybe those two teams can actually meet against one another in the NCAA tournament. It is possible, so there's that. Before I go to a commercial break, I'm just going to say this to Nebraska fans. Please stop being, very judgmental. When your team loses, it's always pointing the finger at Lexi Sun or John Cook or someone. But when your team wins, it's always, you're basically just rubbing it into the other team, saying, you just lost to Lexi Sun. Please stop. I don't know how to basically put it, but please just be professional. It's so dumb. I saw this one Nebraska fan basically saying, you just lost to Lexi Sun, when Ohio State lost a 2-0 lead to Nebraska. But then the second time, he goes and says, your team got lucky against Nebraska. It's like, grow up, dudes. Don't be like that. There's no such thing as getting lucky. You don't get lucky in volleyball. It's either your team hits the ball in bounds, or they hit it out of bounds, or your team hits the ball in bounds, or they hit it out of bounds, or the other team makes a hitting error, or an error of some sort. Please don't use the word, your team got lucky. It's so dumb. And Ohio State did not get lucky. Yes, they've had to go 5 sets with a bunch of their matches, but the fact that they've been able to win most of those 5-set matches is absolutely amazing. So, please, Nebraska fans, and to this one Nebraska fan in general, stop being like, I know you're passionate, but please just don't point fingers if your team loses. It's no one's fault if a player had a bad hitting night or if someone made a bad decision. Lexi Sun is a talented player. I'm not a Nebraska fan in the slightest, but I'm also going to say this. Lexi Sun is a very talented player, and you ought to be thankful she went to Nebraska. Because remember, for those that don't know, Lexi Sun actually transferred from Texas to Nebraska. You ought to be thankful she fell into your lap. I do not want to hear any more of the slander of of it's all Lexi Sun's fault. It's like, you ought to, if it's because of her that your team actually is a top 5 team. If you don't want her, then send her off to USC or anywhere else. Like, it's ridiculous. It's like, I know you're supposed to be passionate fans, but that's not being passionate. It's called being a jerk. And please just be professional. I'm not trying to call anyone out, but it is what it is. So, on that note, we're actually going to take ourselves a quick little break. When we come back, we are going to preview all sorts of matches and go over which matchups are those to watch for this week. So you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And you can check out all of our amazing shows here on many platforms such as Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, TuneIn, you name it. So there's that, and you can check out all of our amazing shows that's going to be happening all this week. Coming on later on in the day, we have Bases Loaded that's going to be coming on in about 50 minutes, which you just heard the drop for that. Definitely check out Brandon Buckingham and Blake Henley, as they'll be talking about previewing the AL West and the NL West. I'll be tuning in for that because I am a USC I'm not USC, Angels and Dodgers fan. And I also do the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, so there's that. Alright, now let's go to segment 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. So we have a lot of matchups to go through. And there were actually a lot of noteworthy matches to go over that, unfortunately, I can't preview all of them, because even though I could go past the 3-hour mark, because for those that don't know, Bases Loaded is actually on StreamYard. They don't go live on Spreaker anymore. It's just mainly StreamYard. So there's that. So there are a lot of noteworthy matchups, in my opinion, for this week. This week is also rivalry week. So basically, rivalry week in the West Coast Conference, the Pac-12, I think the SEC as well, and whatnot. So I really love rivalry week, especially since it's in March Madness. It's absolutely amazing. It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. So I can't go through all of the noteworthy matchups, but I actually made a 3-tier list in terms of matches to watch for. We have the matches to watch for, in my opinion, the honorable mentions, and the low honorable mentions. So the low honorable mentions we have this week are UCLA USC, which is pretty much at the bottom of the totem pole, as well as like Oregon State Oregon and Utah Colorado and Arizona, and yeah, those type of matchups. I mean, they pretty much involve a ranked team, but not a ranked team, a sub 500 team. And unfortunately, that is the case for USC this year. I felt bad for the Trojans. I hope they can turn it around soon, but this year's probably not going to be the year. Poor Trojans. Coincidentally, Pepperdine LMU is kind of in the not so honorable mention category. But if I were Pepperdine, I would be very careful with LMU. Otherwise, they could meet the same fate as San Diego. So we'll see what happens with the Waves against the Lions. That's basically the PCH Cup, and then USC UCLA is the West Coast Showdown or the Crosstown Rivalry, and then Oregon State is the Civil War, and then the Rumble in the Rockies is Utah Colorado. So there's that. And then another rivalry matchup to watch for, which is on my low honorable mentions, is Ohio State Michigan. So Ohio State-Michigan is a very intriguing matchup, in my opinion, just for the sheer fact that Michigan is still looking for that big standout victory, while Ohio State is looking to continue its strength in they're looking to continue its amazing season. That's what I'm trying to say. And then another noteworthy matchup in terms of the SEC is Missouri-Texas A&M. So I already know what I said about Missouri, but here's the thing about Texas A&M. So A&M is basically borderline of third place and probably borderline of making the NCAA tournament, as Missouri and Texas A&M are actually third and fourth place. A&M is 9-5. While Missouri is 11-7. A&M still has to make up a series against Tennessee, which that team is also borderline of making the NCAA tournament, as well as South Carolina and Arkansas. So a lot of series that needs to be made up, especially for Tennessee's part. The Tennessee has like series against Ole Miss that needs to be made up because of weather, and then they have a series against Texas A&M because of COVID within the Aggies' program that still needs to be made up. So there's that, and pretty much those five teams are borderline of making the NCAA tournament. And I'm pretty sure one is not going to make it. 1, 2, if not 3 will not make it. So there's that. But Missouri, Texas A&M is a very honorable mention not a low honorable mention, but it's probably the best of the bunch. Now for the honorable mentions. So the honorable mentions in terms of noteworthy matchups are Kansas City, South Dakota. So I went with this matchup for two different reasons. One, because of my friends at the Kansas City Shuffle, which you should check out every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And also because this is a battle for first place in the Summit League. So South Dakota actually had one of their matches canceled because of weather. And it was a crucial matchup. Their matchup against Denver got canceled because of the bad weather in Denver, and they just basically said we're not gonna play because of the bad weather. So I don't know why, but it is what it is. So now they have one less matchup, which it was declared no contest between either team. So that basically is going to get thrown out, and they're probably not going to make it up. So that's going to be very tricky for South Dakota if Kansas City decides to run the table. So Kansas City, on the other, coincidentally, has 9 straight wins, which is very surprising. They're doing really well in the Summit League, and it's only their first season here. South Dakota also has one loss, and that one loss was to Omaha. But Omaha is pretty good as well, so we can't fault South Dakota for losing to them as well. But this matchup could decide first place between South Dakota and Kansas City. You also can't really sleep on Denver as well. Denver is also in the hunt, and I don't think Omaha's in the hunt. No, because Omaha actually lost a matchup. I think it was a week ago. don't remember. I think it was to South Dakota State. Let me just look it up on the Summit League website. Yeah, Omaha has lost 4 conference matches. One was to Kansas City, one was to South Dakota, one was to Omaha. And yep, they lost to South Dakota State. So I'm pretty certain Omaha is going to finish 4th. But that's not bad because Omaha, I think, finished 4th in the Summit League last year, and they wound up making it to the finals. I think Denver was the one that wound up winning the Summit League tournament last year. They even knocked off South Dakota. So I think Omaha is going to be fine, especially if they get Kansas City, because I think they match up pretty well against Kansas City. Kansas City doesn't have the tallest athletes, but they don't really have the least athletic. But as for Kansas City, South Dakota, getting back on track, that's a very good matchup to watch for. Definitely keep an eye on it. I'm liking the Summit League this year, and I really want to see how good Kansas City does. It also will give good material for Dave and Pesquire next week, so we'll see. And then the final honorable mention for noteworthy volleyball matchups is Louisville, Florida. So Louisville is basically atop the ACC volleyball standings, and it's looking like they might be able to win the conference. Unfortunately, they are 7-2. They have to make up a few matches. They have to make up their second matchup against Notre Dame, and then they also have to make up their matchup against Virginia Tech, which is crucial as well, and they also have to play Georgia Tech on March 26th. So there's that. But a win over Florida State would definitely do their confidence a favor. However, Florida State is looking for some winning ambitions as well, as they're not too far off from the ACC standings lead. They are 6-3, while Notre Dame and Tech are both 9-2, but they're still in the hunt for the ACC title. They just need a lot of help from the rest of the field, so we'll see. Florida State does have a tough schedule going forward. Like they play Louisville this weekend, and then next weekend they play Pitt, and then they also play North Carolina, and that's pretty much that for their schedule. So other than Louisville and Pitt, I guess, it doesn't really get too tough for them. North Carolina could prove to be a challenge, since North Carolina is still theoretically in the hunt for the ACC crown, but they have a long shot of getting in, just because North Carolina has a tough schedule going forward, because they still have to play, next week, North Carolina plays Notre Dame, then they play Florida State next weekend, then they play Pitt next weekend, then they play Louisville, then they play Louisville the following week, and then they close out with Miami as well. So North Carolina has the toughest schedule going forward. Like, they're lucky to have Wake Forest this week, and they still have to make up their matchup against Georgia Tech. So, yeah, North Carolina, you're going to have a tough time winning the ACC. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to North Carolina fans. It hasn't been easy this year. I know. Basketball as well. I digress. But Louisville, Florida State is going to be a great matchup in terms of women's volleyball. It'll put Florida State's winning streak on the line. They haven't really beaten anyone worth noting other than Notre Dame. So they do have a pair of wins over UCF, which that's not a conference game, but it's still impressive, to say the least. So we'll see. All right, but now let's get into the noteworthy matchups for this week. So we're going to start with the West Coast Conference, and we're going to start with, well, actually, no. Let's start with the, let's go over the AVCA top 15 men's coaches poll and the top 25 women's coaches poll. The beach coaches poll hasn't been released, which is sad, but oh well. All right, so 15 through 11 in terms of the men's coaches poll. So 15 is Ball State, 14 is George Mason, 13 is UC San Diego, 12 is UC Irvine, and 11 is New Jersey Institute of Technology, or NJIT. 10 through 6, 10 is Long Beach State, 9 is Penn State, 8 is McKendree, 7 is Grand Canyon, and 6 is UCLA. 5 through 1, 5 is Lewis, 4 is Pepperdine, 3 is UC Santa Barbara, 2 is BYU, and your number 1 team in terms of men's volleyball is Hawaii, which honestly is no surprise. Something to note in terms of men's volleyball is that Lewis actually beat McKendree last weekend. So it actually was a long while since McKendree last played a match, as their last match was against Lewis on February 26th, and then Lewis played them again on March 12th, which resulted in a loss to McKendree. So, tough loss for McKendree, but they still have a good chance at winning their conference as they close out the season against Loyola of Chicago this weekend, and then next weekend they have Purdue of Fort Wayne at Purdue of Fort Wayne, and then they close out the season against Ball State in Lebanon, Illinois. So McKendree's still having a great year. It's just that loss to Lewis kind of set them back. So, yeah. Now let's go back to the women's top 25 coaches poll. So 25 through 21. 25 is Florida State. Hey, Florida State, welcome to the top 25. Great to have you. Number 24 is Creighton. Number 23 is Georgia Tech. Number 22 is Pepperdine. Hey, the Waves are climbing up. Number 21 is San Diego, which they fell down after they lost to LMU in embarrassing fashion. So 20 through 16. 20 is Western Kentucky. 19 is Pitt. 18 is Notre Dame, 17 is Oregon, and 16 is BYU. 15 through 11, 15 is UCLA, 14 is Washington State, 13 is Louisville, 12 is Penn State, and 11 is Utah. 10 through 6, 10 is Purdue, 9 is Ohio State. Hey, welcome to the top 10, Ohio State. You deserve it. 8 is Washington, 7 is Florida, and 6 is Baylor. 5 through 1, 5 is Nebraska, 4 is Minnesota, 3 is Kentucky, 2 is Texas, and the number 1 team in the ABCA Top 25 Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll is Wisconsin, which hasn't played in over 3 weeks, but the second part isn't really their fault. So there's that. Hey, what's good, Davidson Crooks? Good to have you in the chat room. So now that Mr. Davidson is here, thank you for tuning in to Set Point. I'm actually going over some of the matchups right now. You know what? I was going to start with this first matchup, but because Davidson popped in, we're going to start with the SEC. So the SEC for this week has a big-time matchup, which basically could decide the SEC conference championship. So it's between number 7 Florida and number 3, Kentucky. And this series will actually take place at Kentucky. So Kentucky, as we know, is the dominant team that has not lost a match all season. They are 16-0, while Florida is 16-2. Florida has only lost one match away, and they've only lost one match at home, and they barely was able to squeak out a home win against Missouri, but they dominated the second matchup against Missouri. So Florida is led by Tara Caesar, who has 251 kills, while Thayer Hall has 222 kills. Holly Carlton has 147 kills as well, so there's that in terms of all the triple-digit kill leaders. Marley Monserrat has 613 assists, while in terms of service aces, Caesar leads the team in aces with 19, while Holly Carlton is not too far behind as she has 16 service aces. In terms of digs, Ellie McKissock has 221 digs, while Monserrat has 161 digs, and Caesar has 159 digs, and Paula Kriame has 119 digs as well. In terms of blocks, Lauren Dooley, the reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Week, has 92 digs, while Holly Carlton has 60 digs, and Thayer Hall has... blocks. Lauren Dooley has 92 blocks, Holly Carlton has 60 blocks, and Thayer Hall has 35 blocks. As a team, Florida is hitting .296 while holding their opponents to a hitting percentage of .155, which is very impressive. Now, as for Kentucky, so Kentucky, I haven't been really paying attention to too many of Kentucky's matchups just because they've basically dominated everybody. But this past weekend was the first time they dropped a set since they played Missouri back in the fall. So if my math serves me correctly, Kentucky had won a grand total of how many? I think it was 36 consecutive sets, and then actually no, it was 38, and then Ole Miss snapped that streak, and they made a huge deal of it, and then wound up losing. So there's that. So Kentucky is led by Allie Stumler, who has 231 kills, while Avery Skinner has 162 kills. Azani Teeler has 130 kills, and those are it for your triple-digit kill leaders for Kentucky. Madison Lilly has 634 kills, and it's not even close to who has the second most. 634 assists, while it's not even close on who has the second most assists. In terms of service aces, Gabby Curry leads the team in aces with 16, while Lilly has 15, and Stumler and Lauren Tharp each have 14. In terms of digs, they are led by Gabby Curry, who has 176 digs, while Allie Stumler has 133 digs, and Madison Lilly has 123 digs. In terms of blocks, they are led by Azani Teeler, who has 67 blocks on the season, while Lilly has 41. Elise Goetzinger has 40 blocks, and Avery Skinner has 28 blocks. As a team, Kentucky is hitting 363. 363, my gosh. While they're holding their opponents to only 138. So here's the thing about Kentucky. There's one word that describes Kentucky this year. Consistent. Despite them losing the set last week to Ole Miss, and despite losing 2 sets to Missouri back in the fall and 1 set to Tennessee back in the fall, this Kentucky team is very, very good. There's a reason why they had the #1 recruiting class back in 2020. And to all Kentucky fans, I know the basketball season wasn't bad, but this is your team you need to be cheering for. Kentucky women's volleyball is for real. This could be their chance. This could probably be their weekend that they could clinch the SEC championship. I'm pretty sure with 2 wins, that basically locks up the SEC crown for them. I do know that Kentucky next week has Alabama, and then I think they have another series they have to make up against South Carolina. But even if they lose all 4 of those matchups, if they beat Florida twice this week, then Kentucky is pretty much the SEC champion, and they'll be going to the NCAA tournament. Florida, on the other hand, is in a dire situation, as they are 16-2, and they basically need to run the table, and they also need to get some help along the way. And those 2 losses to South Carolina and Georgia are starting to loom large. I'm sorry to say, but it is true, because back in the fall, I thought that Florida was actually going to have a favorable schedule, but unfortunately that wasn't the case, and they're now in this situation where they basically have to run the table, and they need help from some other teams to take down Kentucky. But that's not happening. Like, Bama is not, and Davidson, please forgive me for saying this, but Bama is not the best women's volleyball team in the SEC. I mean, they're certainly not dead last, but they're certainly not going anywhere. So, that's going to be doubtful in terms of Florida getting help. And South Carolina is also up there, but they're not the greatest as well. So, and I also think that Kentucky has to make up a series against Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. Just going to look at their schedule right now. Yeah, they have their matchups against South Carolina and Texas A&M got postponed. So actually, if Florida beats Kentucky twice and then they somehow lose to Texas A&M or South Carolina, then Kentucky might have different plans in terms of winning the SEC. But we're not going to look too far ahead. Like, there is the final week of the regular season, which is a makeup week for everybody, for those that missed matches due to COVID. But that's not going to get finalized until the final week of the season. So, as for Kentucky-Florida, so this is a huge matchup huge two matchups for Florida and Kentucky. Florida needs to win these two matchups if they want to have any sort of chance of winning the SEC. Kentucky, on the other hand, is basically in the driver's seat. Even if they split their matchups this week, they are still in good shape. But I think Kentucky wins both matchups against Florida. Florida does have a very good team, but Kentucky is consistent on both ends of the ball and in serve receive as well. So, honestly, I don't see how Kentucky loses. They're just that good. They're well coached, and they have great complementary players. It's not just Avery Skinner that just does the work, or Allie Stumler. They have other key contributors as well, as they even sometimes get contributions from Avery Skinner's sister, Maddie Skinner, who has 80 kills, and Azani Taylor has 130, so Kentucky is definitely consistent. They have consistency across the board, and again, that class of 2020 is really paying off for them because they're going to continue to get better and better as the years progress. So that's just me, but I got Kentucky winning both matchups this weekend. So there's that for the SEC. Now let's jump on over to the West Coast Conference. Let's jump it back to the West Coast, as we're actually going to try to get this done before 7. So we have, I actually forgot BYU's ranking right now. We have number 16 BYU and number 21 San Diego. Now, both these matchups are going to be taking place on different days. There's going to be one match Wednesday at San Diego, and then Saturday there's going to be a matchup at BYU. Just because it wouldn't be fair if one team got home field advantage and the other didn't. So, because those are two balanced teams. So BYU, the young BYU Cougars are led by Talon Ballard-Nixon, who has 148 kills, while Kate Grimmer has 117 kills. Aaron Livingston has 86 kills, while Leilani Dodson has 76 kills. In terms of assists, Whitney Bauer has 411 assists, while in terms of service aces, Taylor Tosinga Hifu has 15 service aces, while Bauer is right behind her with 14. In terms of digs, Maddie Allen has 159 digs, while Bauer has 137 digs. In terms of blocks, Leilani Dodson is second on the team with blocks with 30, while Kennedy Eschenberg has 32. As a team, BYU is hitting 299, but their opponents are hitting 220, which is quite surprising. As for San Diego is led by Roxy Wilbin, who has 178 digs. Grace Froling has 126 digs. Thana Fayad has 129 digs. Katie Lukes is someone I'm keeping my eye on this weekend. She actually hasn't played a full season due to COVID, but she is a key. She was actually on the preseason all-conference team, as she has 43 kills, but she's starting to get it together. She just needs to have a better game than she did last Saturday against LMU, so there's that. In terms of assists, Laura Nadil has 370 assists, while Alex Hoagland, who got to see time on Saturday, has 59 assists. In terms of aces, Roxy Wilbin has 51 aces, while Grace Froling and Thana Fayad each have 14. In terms of digs, Wilbin leads the team in digs with 126, while Cameron Tastad has 104 digs. Thana Fayad has 93 digs, Annie Benbow has 99 digs, and Lauren Medill has 85 digs. In terms of blocks, Ellie Schrader, the freshman, leads the team in blocks with 43. I always say respect the specs because she actually wears sport glasses when she plays volleyball, so good for her. And Lauren Turner has 38 blocks, and Froling has 36 blocks. As a team, San Diego is hitting they're hitting 273 while holding their opponents to 157. So here's the thing about San Diego. They haven't really been challenged. Of all of the opponents that San Diego has faced this year, not one of them is ranked. Not one. And that's in a Cat Williams voice. Meanwhile, the same can be said for BYU, except one of their wins was against Pepperdine, which wasn't ranked but now is ranked. So this is a tough matchup to predict when it comes to BYU and San Diego. Like, to me, last year San Diego won both matchups. This year I can see both teams splitting, and here's why. Both teams are pretty much on the same level. They're both young, but they're both very talented. But here's the thing about BYU. They're really young. They have 2 seniors, 2 juniors, and I believe like a combined 11 or 13 sophomores and freshmen. So you kind of got to give the advantage to San Diego, but I have San Diego and BYU taking both matches. I don't see San Diego beating BYU at BYU twice in 2 years. It would be crazy if they did. If they did, then I take back all the things they said about them against LMU. But after that atrocious loss to LMU, I don't trust San Diego on the road. I'm sorry, but I don't. I don't even know if I'm going to trust them against Pepperdine next week. So there's that little matchup between San Diego and BYU. That could decide the West Coast Conference right there. Especially for San Diego, who plays Pepperdine. And also we got to keep an eye on Pepperdine as they play LMU, because LMU could play spoiler to Pepperdine's conference title hopes as well. So there's that. All right, now let's jump over to the Pac-12. So we're not going to go too far down the road, as this matchup is actually going to be a rivalry matchup in the Pac-12. It's going to be the Apple Cup between Washington State and Washington, or should I say number 14 Washington State and number 8 Washington, as the Cougars and Huskies will be facing one another in this matchup, both on Friday and on Sunday. So Washington State the young Washington State Cougars are led by Pia Timmer, who has 154 kills, while Juliana Dalton has 112 kills. Magda Jelarova has 100 kills, so there's that right there. And Kalia Williams has 87 kills. In terms of assists, Hannah Pukis has 431 digs, while in terms of aces, Penny Tusa has 22 service aces, while Timmer has 15 service aces. In terms of digs, Hannah Pukis has 140 digs, while Aria McComber has 113 digs, while Timmer has 104 digs. In terms of blocks, they are led by Magda Jelarova, who has 58 blocks, while Williams has 45 blocks, and Juliana Dalton has 36. As a team, Washington State hits 253 while their opponents are hitting 161. Now let's jump over to Washington, a team I've talked for probably like the past few weeks, except for last week when they played USC. I digress, though. So Washington is led by Samantha Drexel. Yes, her last name's pronounced Drexel and not Dreschel. So Drexel has 220 kills, while Claire Hoffman has 206 kills. Maddie Ensley has 162 kills, while Lauren Sanders has 92 kills. In terms of assists, LMA Powell has 635 assists, while in terms of service aces, Powell and Drexel each have 18 assists, while the ace leader is Hoffman, who has 23 aces. In terms of digs, Shannon Crenshaw leads the team in digs with 211, while Powell has 144 and Drexel has 141. And then Hoffman and Emma Callie have 119 and 115 respectively. In terms of blocks, Sanders leads the team in blocks with 81, which is actually the episode number of this show, which is quite surprising. And then Drexel has 58, and Marin Grote has 57 blocks. As a team, Washington is hitting 266 while their opponents are hitting 202. So here's the thing about Washington and Washington State. Washington has a very talented team, and they actually have great, and they've actually won most of their series. They've only split 2 series this season. One against Arizona State, one against UCLA, and the other against Oregon. So for Washington, they have a solid amount of a senior and junior class and underclassmen, while Washington State is very young. I think they only have 1 senior this year, if I'm not mistaken. So with that being said, this matchup could be pivotal for both teams in the Pac-12, as there's not too much separating the Cougars and the whatchamacallits, the Huskies. I was blanking out there for a second. But yeah, there's not too much separating Washington and Washington State in the standings, as Washington State surprisingly leads the standings at 10-2, while Washington is 13-3. You also gotta watch out for Utah, Oregon, and UCLA, as Utah is 11-3, Oregon is 9-3, and UCLA is 11-5. So, as for Washington and Washington State, I can see Washington winning both matchups. I'm sorry, but that's kind of how it is, considering Washington State's just too young. I'm probably going to get proven wrong, and then Washington State's going to dominate both matchups, or at least win one at the very least, but Washington State is just too young. And I'm not trying to be a hater on Washington State, but they haven't really had too many standout wins. They did have the standout win against UCLA, but ever since that win against UCLA, they haven't had another standout win, as they actually haven't played anyone of noteworthiness, as they've only beaten Colorado, Cal, and Oregon State, all of which most of the Pac-12 should beat. And I want to say some of their matches also got postponed or canceled due to COVID, as I actually looked at the wrong schedule. I need to look at Washington State's schedule. Yeah, their series against USC got canceled. Their series against Stanford got canceled. So for Washington State, they basically have a lot of making up to do. So if they want to win the Pac-12, they're going to need to run the table. And looking at Washington State's schedule, their schedule gets really tough. Well, not really tough, but next week they play Utah, which is another pivotal series. While they can't look that far ahead, they also have to contend with playing Washington at Washington and then playing Washington at Washington State. So I got Washington winning both matchups just because Washington is just a more experienced team. Drexel, Sanders, Powell, and Hoffman are just the three-headed monsters. So I don't see the Cougars winning a match this weekend. I don't like being a hater, but it is the truth. But it is the truth about Washington State. Next year, I could see Washington State winning the Pac-12. If Stanford doesn't return all of its players, of course. But still, Washington State has a great future ahead of themselves. And if it weren't for some of their matches getting canceled due to COVID and whatnot, because they haven't had one COVID case as of right now. USC had to cancel their 2 weeks because of COVID cases, and then Stanford didn't meet the minimum number of players because of injuries and COVID and whatnot. So it's not Washington State's fault. Like, Washington State probably could have had another non-conference series against like Oregon had it not been for the Pac-12 getting in their way. But I digress. So now for the final noteworthy women's matchup of the weekend, and this one is going to come in the Big Ten, as this one's going to come against number 1 Wisconsin and number 4 Minnesota, or number 5 Minnesota, I'm sorry. Now this matchup actually got moved around, as this matchup's going to be on Thursday and on Sunday. So the Thursday matchup's going to be at Wisconsin, and then the Sunday matchup's going to be at Minnesota, which is some good stuff. So we'll start with the Golden Gophers, the number 5 team. I'm sorry. Actually, no, I was right, actually. Minnesota's the number 4 team. Nebraska's the number 5 team. Why can't they just both be at number 4 or 5? Anyway, Minnesota is led by Stephanie Samity, who has 172 kills, while Taylor Landfair has 117 kills. Adana Rollins has 91 kills, and Regan Pittman has 54 kills. The reason why she gets noteworthiness is because Regan Pittman is actually one of the best players on Minnesota. And also, shout out to Minnesota for not updating their statistics, as their statistics is basically showing them at 9-1 instead of 11-1. The nerve of you, Minnesota. Anyway, so contrary to popular belief, these stats aren't fully correct. So I could still see Minnesota holding their opponents to under 200 while hitting in the mid 200s. So there's that. Melanie Schaffmaster leads the team in assists, while in terms of service to aces, it's pretty close between Regan Pittman, Cece McGraw, and Rachel Kilkelly. In terms of digs, Cece McGraw leads the team in kills, but it's pretty close for second between Melanie Schaffmaster, Adana Rollins, and Stephanie Samity. In terms of blocks, the block queen is Regan Pittman. There is no one that comes close to her on Minnesota in terms of leading in blocks overall. So there's that. All right, so now for Wisconsin. So here's the thing about Wisconsin. Wisconsin hasn't played in over 3 weeks. After their series against Michigan State, which had them 10-0, they found out that Michigan State had a COVID outbreak, and then Wisconsin and everyone agreed that Wisconsin should take the next 2 weeks off due to COVID protocols, which means their series against Nebraska and their series against Iowa got postponed. And just when they were all ready to go back onto the court, Northwestern also postpones their series last week because of a COVID outbreak within the Wildcats' program. So Wisconsin has been off for 4 weeks, partially because it's not their fault, partially because they want to be safe, and partially because they don't want to spread the disease. Because we're still in a pandemic. Like, we're not out of the woods yet, unfortunately. So Wisconsin is led by Dana Redke, who has 93 kills, while Devin Robinson has 86 kills. Grace Loberg has 77 kills, while Molly Haggerty has 53 kills. These stats are a lot lower than most teams because they haven't played too many matches. They've only played 10. As for assists, Sydney Hilly leads the team in assists with 344, while in terms of aces, Izzy Ashburn leads the team in aces with 17. In terms of digs, Lauren Barnes has 124 digs, while in terms of blocks, no doubt about it, Dana Redke leads the team in blocks with 53. While in terms of hitting percentage, Wisconsin is hitting 351 while their opponents are hitting 122. So here's the thing about Wisconsin. They're still undefeated, they're still the number one team, and they are still the dominant bully of all NCAA women's volleyball. Here's the thing about this matchup. This is going to be a matchup between a very rusty team and a team that barely was able to get past Illinois last week in their first matchup against the Fighting Illini. And I'm going to make a bold prediction. Minnesota beats Wisconsin in one of these matchups. Yes, I said it. Wisconsin's going to lose this weekend. It's going to be because they're rusty. It's not going to be because of their skill level. It's going to be because of the rust they had because of missing 2 weeks. And it's not their fault. Again, they didn't ask for this, but they kind of rolled the dice on when it came to being when it came to postponing and whatnot. So there's that. But I think with all the rust that's been happening, Wisconsin's going to lose one match to Minnesota. If I'm wrong, then I'll be taking my lumps and I'll be eating crow and I'll be getting dunked on by Wisconsin fans. But I will also say this about Minnesota. They are the real deal. Like, Minnesota is such a great defensive team. Like, Regan Pittman doesn't need to have, 20, 30, even 40 kills in order to help Minnesota get the victory. As long as she's doing her thing defensively, whether it's digging the ball, blocking the ball, or even whether it's with serving and whatnot, Regan Pittman can really help Minnesota get the W, and she is just a what's the word? She's just a true key player. She is just the angler. She's basically the gears that help the ship go forward and whatnot. She's a catalyst. That's the word I was looking for. She's a catalyst for Minnesota this year. And I think that Minnesota's defense is going to overpower Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin has multiple All-Americans and they have multiple options to go through, but I just think that Minnesota is just going to have a little bit more in the tank to take down the Wisconsin Badgers. But I think it's going to be a good thing for Wisconsin to lose because they'll get their bad loss out of the way as opposed to losing in the NCAA tournament because it's tough to complete a season undefeated. Gonzaga can tell you, and Wichita State can tell you. So there's that right there. And one last matchup to go through on the NCAA men's side of things, and then I'll let you all go, is Penn State and New Jersey Institute of Technology. Now, NJIT and Penn State are both tied in the EIVA standings. NJIT is number 11 in the AVCA coaches polls, while Penn State is number 9. And NJIT is actually on a 9-game winning streak, and they have looked really good ever since that loss to Penn State. And this just goes to show you that NJIT could be the dark horse that comes out of the EIVA, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Highlanders can do, and I'm also looking forward to seeing how Penn State does. I'm not going to get fully into this matchup. I'm going to say this: Penn State and NJIT are both so good. I'm going to say this: both teams split their matchups. I don't like seeing both teams split their matchups, but I think both teams are very much evenly matched, and they've had their fair share of bad losses and really good wins. But I think this series is going to see both those teams splitting their matchups in two hard-fought series. If I'm wrong, then I'll eat my crow, and I will get dunked on by the winning team. Also, it's the Yinzer Report versus the show that never sleeps. All right, so there's the matchups for the week. One more shout out before we get on out of here. I gotta give a shout to Alondra Vasquez of, I forget what school she plays for. She plays for the University of E. Oh gosh. I really do apologize. But Alondra Vasquez. So, the University of Evansville. So, Alondra Vasquez of the University of Evansville, she recorded what was probably another performance of the year, which means we might have to move over Brooke Nuneviller. Alondra Vasquez had 30 kills and 30 digs, which is the first in the Missouri Valley Conference history, and it's also happened less than 10 times in NCAA volleyball history. So that's absolutely amazing. She is a member of the 30 for 30 club. She got 30 plus kills and 30 plus digs, as she had 32 digs and 32 kills in Evansville's loss to Drake this past Sunday. It's a shame that they actually lost, which actually sours the mood, but the fact that she had those numbers is absolutely amazing. I even said, Lord have mercy, hashtag Madden numbers, and she said thank you. So, you know what, I'm going to drop her a follow. So, yeah, I sound weird. But that's going to do it. So that's pretty much that shout out of the way. And that's going to do it for Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in on this beautiful Monday evening. But we're not done yet. iSports Radio is far from done today, as we've got Bases Loaded coming up in 5 minutes. And then we also have a full slate of shows tomorrow. We have the Yinzer Report on at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Then we have the Kansas City Shuffle on at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Central Time. Then we have the Philly Sports Talk Show on at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then we have Gloves Off on at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And it's all going to be a fun it's going to be a fun time. The Yinzer Report is basically a Pittsburgh sports show, or Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania sports show, while the Kansas City Shuffle is a Kansas City sports show, while the Philly Talks sports show is a Philadelphia sports-based show, and Gloves Off is a wrestling / combat sports / MMA / UFC / you get the point type of show. So there's that right there. And without any further delay, it is time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you all for joining me on tonight's episode of Set Point. If you listen to me live, I appreciate you. If you listen to me on the replay, I also appreciate you. Shout out to Larry B and Davidson for popping in the chat room. Really means a lot. And definitely check out iSports Radio on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook, and on YouTube, and everywhere else that has a platform. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy the NCAA tournament. Enjoy the volleyball that's going on this week. And I actually won't see you for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I'm going to be off for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show just because I have a lot going on in my life. And I think this week is the best week to take a week off. So I will see you all probably later on this week for some live calls. Once I get everything out of the way, of course. Have a great night, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the week.